I'm Simon Richards, Avon Fire and Rescue Service. We have around about 1,100 employees. 650 of those are whole-time firefighters on the larger fire stations. About 250 are retained firefighting crew. We have 24 facilities, fire stations, plus a few additional offices, training facilities, and on our headquarters site as well. We're a relatively small organisation in carbon terms. Our emissions are in the region of 3,500 tonnes a year. That breaks down about 2/3 to do with our buildings and fire stations, and the remaining third is to do with our vehicles, business travel and fleet. The original driver behind getting involved with measuring our carbon was really to do with the Carbon Trust programme that we entered into in 2009-10, and also corporately we committed to reducing our carbon emissions. In terms of using the data, the initial use was for the Carbon Trust programme, where we had to establish a baseline for our 2008-9 performance, but since then we've used it for a lot of other purposes: internal communication and reporting, external communication and reporting. That's included things like our audits, also reporting into the CRC as an information declarer, and now carbon data forms part of our annual accounts each year, so that's something that we've got to include and build on every year. In terms of the value of the data, the main benefit to date has really been around proving the benefit of some of the work that we've been doing in carbon efficiency. So changing lighting, upgrading heating systems, we're able to quickly report back on whether or not that's been successful. One of the key things we've used the data for is understanding where to start our journey in carbon management and understanding which our key problems are and which our biggest area and potential for improvement might be. And that's thrown up a few things that we hadn't particularly thought of before, and it's very much been about our heating systems once we've got into the data, and certainly the rising prices of oil, gas and electricity has brought our attention into focus on that work. Another useful element that we've been able to provide is benchmarking with other fire and rescue services. So on the back of some of the work we've done and other larger fire and rescue services in the country, we've pulled that data together so we can understand even more about what a typical fire station should consume, what the best performers are, what the worst performers are, and that's really helping the whole sector move forward in terms of carbon management and share best practice. The biggest challenge to date has really been establishing our baseline data from 2008-9. We did most of that from historical bills, some of which were inaccurate, and we had to do an element of modelling as well, and I spent a lot of time working on that data. Since then, though, we've installed AMR smart meters, which are reading electricity and gas consumption every half hour, and we've got the data on hand whenever we need it. And certainly my recommendation would be to look at automated systems early on in the process. That would have saved us a lot of time and helped the programme move forward a lot more quickly. We can link the data recording and logging into our building management systems and link that in with weather data, outside temperatures, building occupation and so on. And I think that'll tell us a lot more about what's happening in our buildings and help us identify more projects.
Wessex Water is a water and sewerage business. We cover the counties of Dorset, Somerset, Wiltshire and the old Avon area. We have a carbon footprint of about 170,000 tonnes. That is from electricity, gas, diesel, transport obviously, and also methane emissions and nitrous oxide emissions from our treatment of sewage and our reuse of sewage sludge. The reasons we got started on measuring and reporting our carbon footprint were twofold really. Firstly, we knew that there was going to be an increased requirement for big businesses to report on their carbon footprint. We could see that coming. So 1998 we published our first account, and then also energy is our third biggest cost, so clearly it's important to measure that stuff so you can manage it really well. The main uses of the data are external and internal, so we produce management reports for senior managers and the board. We have to comply with carbon reduction commitment, and that requires a good level of data accuracy and auditability throughout. And we produce a sustainability report each year and a return to our regulator, Ofwat, who wants to see what the greenhouse gas emissions are of water companies. In terms of challenges, I think our biggest one 5 years ago was really around consistency of data and forecasting. What our emissions were likely to be, or our energy use was likely to be. Back then we had about 1/5 of our power supplies coming from sites which were not automatically metered, but instead we were estimating consumption or having to visit the sites to physically read the meter. So it was harder to get a consistent forecast and outturn figure that matched up. Where we want to go next with this whole area, I think, is really about educating customers, the non-techies, the people who aren't well versed in the energy debate, but people who use water and maybe do that without thinking about it that much, where it's come from, the energy used to produce it, but more importantly, the energy used to heat water within the home, which is about 7 or 8 times the energy input per litre. To get water up to the temperature that you would shower in, that's about 7 or 8 times the amount of energy that is used to treat the water and get it to the house in the first place.
Hi, my name's Michael Barlow. I'm a partner at Burges, Salmon LLP. We're a leading UK law firm. We're based in 2 offices. We have just over 600 staff, and our carbon footprint at the moment is about 2.5 tonnes per employee. We first got involved in sort of measuring our footprint as a result of joining the Legal Sector Alliance. The Legal Sector Alliance is a body that was set up to help law firms deal with their carbon footprints, and we were one of the founder members back in 2007. The data has been incredibly useful. Back in 2007, 2008, when we started measuring it, we identified certain anomalies in our use of resources. So, for example, we identified that we were using a huge amount of electricity overnight, and that led to what we call the big switch-off campaign to get people to switch off their printers and PCs and monitors overnight, and that led to a drastic reduction in our energy use. In August 2010, we moved to a new BREEAM Excellent building. But before we did that, one of the main challenges was trying to get the information out of the managing agents for our landlord. And that was a very slow and painful process. We've now moved into a new building, and we have, for example, 500 real-time electricity meters. So the challenge arising from that has been getting to use the meters, learning what we can measure, and then starting to get used to looking at those on a regular basis and identifying the anomalies in a way that we did in the old building, and then starting to target those anomalies. The other challenge that we've had, and it's really just as a result of moving into a new building which is being constructed, is just the complexity of the legal relationships between all of the various players. So we might identify something that we want to tackle, but it's finding out the right person to do it, because you've got the lease arrangements. We've just recently had a new landlord who's bought the freehold off the bank, and it's just getting to the bottom of who's responsible for what, and then actually targeting the response to the data that we've identified. And we want to go to getting ISO 14001 accreditation. We feel that's important, and that will drive us onwards into more efficient measuring and use of the data. As we're an executive member of the Legal Sector Alliance, one of the principles that has now been written into the alliance is to make reduction targets on our footprint. So we've got to identify what target we want over the next 10 years, and then we've got to find ways to actually achieve those targets. And obviously there's some easy wins along the way, but then beyond that there's a lot of behaviour change and so on that has to happen to achieve those targets.
My advice to anyone starting on this process would be to look really seriously at the automated meter readings and automated systems for data capture. And also on the back of that, focus just on 4 or 5 projects or initiatives and look at what the data's telling you. Work on those easy wins first, and that'll really help you on in the journey.
I think it would be about bringing together people from different bits of the business. So people from the finance department, people from the operations department, people from the environment department who do the sort of sustainability reporting, and make sure there's real coherence of approach and also coherence on the numbers being used internally and externally for energy use. We do that now as a matter of course, but that's always a good thing to start with.
Two tips: join the Legal Sector Alliance and find somebody who's enthusiastic with senior backing.